Hello, my name's Freese and I'm back again making another video for Finest Hour. In today's video we're going to be looking at this Omega 6B, also known as the Omega 53, or in this instance the Omega Fat Arrow. This particular model has a fat arrow on the dial, so what we'll do, let's go over to the bench and we'll get into some more detail about this watch, and I'm going to tell you all about what I'm going to do to restore this and get it back into full working order. Okay, so I've got the watch here on the bench. As you can see, it's in very original condition. It's still got the remnants of an old bracelet that would have been fitted to it. You often see these types of bracelets on this type of military watch where you have fixed lugs, because it needs something that will bend around the fixed lugs themselves and does limit the bracelet choice. But I'll be removing these at some point, and they are obviously nothing to do with how the watch would have originally been specified. So let's get into some historical information about this particular watch, the Omega 53. At the beginning of 1952, amid the Cold War and ongoing hostilities in Korea, the British Air Ministry ordered 5,900 wristwatches from its long-standing London supplier, Goldsmiths and Silversmiths Limited. They in turn contracted Omega to manufacture the watches to the precise specification of the Air Ministry. The original order was issued to Omega on the 27th of June 1952, and delivery of the watches was to be made in May of 1953. These watches were designed and manufactured to a very high standard, which is quite normal for Omega at that period of time, who were making watches of very high quality. They were originally made to be waterproof, and the 283 calibre shockproof movement was finished in rose gold. This movement is a development from the original 30T2 movement that was very popular and was actually designed and made initially in 1939, I think, and they improved the movement by fitting an Inca block setting onto the balance wheel, and then the 283 calibre featured this same shockproof movement, which was obviously very useful for military applications. The inner casing was constructed from soft iron to make the watch anti-magnetic. It effectively has a Faraday cage inside, which prevents magnetism from causing an issue to the parts of the movement that are susceptible to this issue. This ensured that the aircraft's instruments did not affect the watch's crucial performance during flight operations. Interestingly, these watches were originally issued with a thin arrow, and the thin arrows were radium material dials, so the luminous material was all made of radium. However, these were considered too dangerous by the MOD when stockpiled, and they were therefore recalled and redialed with safer tritium fat arrow dials. So here we have a dial that has effectively been redialed by the military, by the MOD, to feature the tritium markers on the arrows, and obviously tritium luminous material in the hands as well. And the reprint also included a new arrow, which was a much fatter font. It's believed that only around 5,900 of these watches were ever manufactured and issued to the RAF in May of 1953, and as a consequence they are rather appropriately referred to today as the 53 Omegas. This is also helped by the fact that the number 53 is engraved on the case back as well. So what we'll do now, let's take the back off of the watch and I can show you the movement and tell you a little bit more about what we need to do internally to get this watch back into working order. Okay, so I've removed the case back now, which as you can see is a little bit dirty around the edge, and we'll tend to that later. And what you'll see here is a special sprung ring which helps to secure the movement inside the case. The arrangement here was to have this dust cover and retaining ring, and these rings are commonly called doohickeys by collectors for reasons not known to me, I'm afraid. But what happens is this ring sits inside the case back and puts tension onto the dust cover, because this whole movement is effectively just sitting in here without any casing clamps or anything to hold it in place. So the ring is responsible for holding everything tight. Let's just get these parts out of the way, so we'll just remove that. So I've removed the dust cover which sits inside of this movement ring here, which effectively creates a cage around the movement, because the dial itself is an iron dial, so by having the iron dial and then this ring and the dust cover on the back, it does completely seal the movement from magnetism. But here we can see the movement, the 283 calibre Omega movement, which is in really nice condition. It's actually it's running, even though it hasn't had a service yet. It doesn't look like it's running particularly well, but it is running, which is an encouraging sign. And this is probably the best version of the Omega 30mm movement, because this is pretty much as far as they went in terms of developing this movement. As mentioned earlier, it has the Inca block setting on the balance cog here, and the same on the main plate underneath, supporting the pivots for the balance wheel. And what this does is to allow the staff of the balance to be supported in a shock protecting device that will move when the watch takes a knock, and it stops the pivots from breaking off. And having seen lots of these movements, the 260 30T2 calibre without this ink block setting, and also the 283 with it, I can confirm that I don't see any balance staff breakages generally on this calibre, whereas you do see quite a lot of them on the earlier ones without the ink block setting. By the ink block setting, the pivots that comes into this section just goes into a jewel with a cap on the top of it, and it's completely rigid. So if the watch takes a knock, the pivot, which is 0.06 millimeters in diameter, is quite easily bent out of shape, and then you obviously have an issue with timekeeping, as this balance wheel is the part that is responsible for maintaining the timekeeping of the movement, because its job is to let the power out of the train in a regular manner in order to provide the timekeeping. So what we need to do now then is to take the movement out of the case. So I can start to take the movement apart, and we also need to have a look at the crystal, which needs to have a polish as well. I've now taken the movement apart to an extent. The keyless work for winding and setting the watch is still in place, so I need to take care of that before I clean the watch. What you can see here is the movement effectively disassembled on this side, the balance wheel still in place. So we've taken the barrel bridge and the train bridge off, and here is the train of wheels that the power goes through: centre wheel, third wheel, fourth wheel, skate wheel, which is the one that works next to the balance there. We've got our mainspring and barrel here, which needs to come out and be cleaned. The upper fourth wheel and various screws, the hour wheel and cannon pinion for the other side of the movement. A lovely simple movement really, and very efficient in the way that it works. I've checked all of these components, they're all in good condition. I can't find any wear to the pivots or to the teeth, so this is a good sign. Watch appears to be in very good condition. There's the second pinion there, which is the part that goes through the centre of the centre wheel, right down there, and then has the second hand fitted to it. So what I'm going to do now is to get all these, I'll take the keyless apart and get all of these components into the cleaning basket, and then get that into the cleaning machine. Whilst this is being cleaned, I'm going to take a look at the crystal, because we need to polish some of the scratches out of the crystal, so take a look at that in a moment. I've now removed the acrylic crystal from the case. As you can see, it is in a fairly scratched condition. It's quite normal for these. But the good thing with a crystal like this is it can be restored. All I need to do is to remove the scratches by polishing. So I just need to spend some time polishing this crystal, which I'm going to go and do now in the polishing room. So I'll go and do that, and then I'll be back to you in a minute and show you the end result once the crystal has been polished. Spent some time polishing the crystal now and removed most of the scratches from the surface, so it's going to be really nice to fit this back into the case, and then obviously to fit the movement back in once I finish the servicing work, and then we'll have the watch complete, and it's going to look a lot better as the dial is going to show up much more clearly with this crystal now that it's had the scratches polished out of it. Okay, so I've now reassembled the watch after the service procedure, and the movement is now fitted back into place in its movement ring. I'll left the dust cover off just to show you how the movement looks like, or how the movement looks after the service. As you can see, it's looking really good. It's very clean. This movement is in really good condition. You can normally tell by the condition of the screw heads. If the screw heads have got lots of marks on them where the watch has been taken apart a lot, and this is quite common on these military timepieces where the watches were repaired by the military themselves, then it's obviously a bit of a shame, because it's nice to have a movement that looks, well finished and as it was when it left the factory. And this movement is certainly in that condition. It hasn't really seen much in the way of work. All the screw heads are good. The plating, the rose gold plating, looks really good as well. So yeah, it's a really good movement. And you can also see the balance wheel ticking away nicely here. It's got a very good action, and the watch is running extremely well. So overall, I'm very pleased the way the service has gone. This is a nice thing about repairing watches of this quality, where they haven't received much of a hard life from servicing and things like that. Most these sort of watches have spent a lot of time in the drawer, and it's quite nice to just effectively recommission them and get them going again, because the parts are all in really good order. I'll turn the movement over now, or turn the watch over rather, and we can have a look at the dial on the hands and the crystal now the watch is all back together. Turn the watch over now, and as you can see, the polishing of the crystal and gentle cleaning of the dial on the hands has really improved the overall appearance on this side. It's lovely to see how clear the dial is now that all the scratches have been removed, and you can really see the legibility of this type of dial design, which are really good in terms of being able to read the time, which is obviously their designed intention, when they were produced years ago. Also, now we've got the hands at 10 past 10, you can see the fat arrow clearly, and you can see obviously why it's called a fat arrow. It's very thick font there, and certainly separates this model from other similar watches. I've given the case a very gentle clean, so it's just removed some of the dirt, and that has also helped to brighten the watch up as well a little bit. And I think overall, the end result is a really good one. This is a really nice example of the Omega 53. As we mentioned earlier, there's about 5,900 of these watches, and it is a relatively rare watch, and certainly to see one in this condition that has obviously been just sat in a drawer or not doing very much for such a long time is a real pleasure.